All right, we're going to talk about sag. It's a big problem. A lot of people don't understand it. It's really simple. There's only three things you got to remember. That's rider, static, and on the stand. So fully extended. So you only have to worry about that. Anyway, we're going to show you how to do that. Most important is always have either a good sag scale or a tape measure. I recommend doing metric. Metric's always a good way to go because it's easy to figure it out. It's all in tens. General rule of thumb is going to be 1/3 of the travel is what your rider sag should be. That's not always the case. Some new bikes, people want to run lower rider sag, and that's okay. But the general rule would always be 1/3 front and rear. So a lot of people don't check the front. It's important to check that as well to know exactly how much travel you're using. So anyway, the main thing, first thing you want to do is you always want to make sure you have an extended length. And this scale is easily adjusted. So we can set it somewhere on the bike, usually through the axle in a straight line. And we'll put it to a point on the fender or on the side panel so we know where we can get a 0 out of it, right? So now that I've zeroed it, we're going to have Tim come over and we're going to set it on the ground and we're going to see what the measurement is and subtract the difference between extended and compressed. Go ahead, Tim. Just pull it off the stand. All right, so it's important to have the rider sit on the bike. Most of the time, it's good to always have them with the gear on. If not, I usually go about 5 millimeters more of preload just to make sure that we get the right rider sag with gear. So you go back to the same spot you measured before with the rider sitting on the pegs, sitting in his normal riding position in an upright, comfortable spot. So right now we're sitting at about 105, somewhere around there. Okay, so you subtract the difference and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be 105. This bike sits a little bit lower. Tim likes to run the lower sag. I think we should get away from that, but he's got a lowering link on here too, so it's going to set the whole bike lower. All right, so hop off, Tim. So the other measurement you got to watch for is called static sag or free sag, just depends on who you're talking to. So that's where we just push on the bike one time, let it settle, and then we're going to measure that measurement one more time. Same spot. The difference is going to be from 0 to whatever the free sag is, and we're looking at about 35 millimeters of free sag. That's a little bit on the high side or low side for free sag. The problem is you want to make sure that your free sag is not too much and not too little. So the idea of that is that you have spring that's in control and not completely sagged out to where all of a sudden when the suspension unloads, you have no spring preload, nothing pushing on the suspension for the next time you bottom out. So it's really important, and that helps you to figure out whether the spring's too soft or too stiff for you. If it's too stiff, you've had to unload the preload, which makes the rider sag or free sag even more, which is going to really show you that the spring is too heavy for that particular rider at that time. So the opposite would be the opposite. Obviously, if you're too heavy and the spring's too light and you crank the preload too much, then the spring is going to be topping out, then you won't have any static sag and you'll have closer to 0. So anyway, that's a simple way to adjust your suspension sag. There's a lot more to come. That's just the first step.